Hey, everybody, it's good to see you again. Welcome back. My name is Sharon Chaden Glass, and you are here at the Idea Networking session. And it is now March 2023. I have two new speakers to bring to you today to share their journeys from teaching into instructional design or learning and development. We first have Laura Parenti. Laura, I didn't ask you. Is that how you say your last name, Parenti?
Mm-hmm.
Parenti.
That's it.
And our second speaker is Kate Berger. Berger, correct?
Burger.
Berger. All right. Kate Berger. While they are speaking, please do feel free to write your questions down. So when we go to breakout rooms, you can select the speaker that you'd like to chat with, or you are also welcome to stay out here in the main room and chat with me. And I just want to set aside a little bit of time here just in case anyone has any good news to share. Updates, things you want to celebrate, things going on like interviews, anything like that. Anyone want to share?
Hi everyone. Hi Sharon. So yeah, I just wanted to share. Recently, it's not an ID role, but I accepted a contract position for an ed tech company as a curriculum writer for ELA. So I get to use some of my background as an English teacher in this new position. So I'm excited for that. And I figure it's kind of like in the umbrella of L&D. So hopefully that'll be a nice step towards that path. Another thing I wanted to share and thank you, Sharon, about was this program called LAMP. So at the last idea networking session, I asked like, is there a way to like get some experience to get that experience? Because I'm kind of in that phase where I need work experience to get work experience. And so Sharon shared this mentoring program called Learn Austin Mentor Program. It's based in Australia. And it's a 4-week program where you get to work on a real client project. The client is Life Skill Academy. And so I'm currently working on a budgeting program, and I might do it on either Articulate or this new program called Chameleon. And throughout that process, you get mentoring guidance through the facilitator, such as Steve Corney, who's in charge of that. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat box if you're interested. And once again, thanks, Sharon, for that opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. I'm really glad that that was useful to you. I get sometimes I get tagged in things that Steve puts out there, so I'm glad that they're useful and that people are attending them. Anyone else feel like sharing?
So
Okay.
I guess I could.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, was somebody else talking?
Nope.
Okay. One of the things that is was helpful to me was in our last meeting, I had been trying to run Windows, or I'd been working on a Windows. I'm used to working on Macs, and I had just asked folks if there was anybody out there that was running Articulate on using Parallels or something on Mac, and I got a bunch of feedback, and I'd previously gotten a lot of resistance from my IT people who said we're not going to do that. But I was able to take that information that I got from this meeting and say these people are saying they're running with no problem, and so I was able to convince them to let me do that and to set me up. So thanks, Sharon, for having this group.
Yeah, awesome. I'm really glad that that was
Yeah,
cool. The things you don't anticipate being a good thing. That's awesome.
yeah, great.
And can you put LAMP on your resume? I mean, yeah, I think that you could figure out a way to put it on there. It's something, and even Raphael, do you want to speak to that? How would you put it on your resume? Where would you put it?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question. I attended a info session with Steve Corney, who's in charge of LAMP. And so there's basically two programs. There's a free version and then there's like a paid version. With the free version, it's not necessarily like that you would put it on your resume because it's just kind of like in terms of like actual work experience because it's not as like supported as guided as the paid version. The paid version, however, you actually work on a real client-based project. So mine's, for example, is on budgeting, and that is something that I'll actually put on my resume under like freelance instructional design work. And so if you go to that website, there's a lot more details on it. And then I think Steve will put on another. He puts on LAMP. I think at least every once in a while. It's not an exact structured schedule. It's just right now it's a good time for him and his team to do it. But keep an eye on that website and connect with him on LinkedIn and ask him any more questions on the program because it's really, really helpful.
Okay, awesome. All right, we're going to move on, get to Laura. Laura, I'm going to spotlight you and you are free to go.
All right, can everybody see my screen? Okay, wonderful. All right, so again, my name is Laura Parenti. I am currently an instructional designer at Goodwill, Minnesota, which is a part of Goodwill Industries. And this is yet another teacher to instructional designer story. Let me get my little people here. There we go. Okay. All right, so before I go into just a tiny bit about me, just for a little bit of context, I was a high school English language arts teacher. Sorry, I'm very nervous, so I stuttered a little bit. It's just because I'm nervous. I taught 10th through 11th grade, but I also taught ACE literature, and that was a college level course, kind of like AP literature, where my students could take the exam at the end of the year and earn college credit for it. And that was really part of one of the highlights of my teaching career. I absolutely loved literature. I was a literature major, and my favorite text to teach was Macbeth. I kind of always loved the looks of disdain I would get from my 10th grade students when they heard we were studying Shakespeare, and see how those turned into, kind of curiosity, interest, and then fascination, and telling me at the end of the year that was my favorite unit. That just was wonderful, because I just have a passion for literature and for reading. But teaching during COVID was the beginning of the end for my teaching career. And I know it's a story that you probably all know all too well. And there was a point where I started to realize, I don't know if I really want to keep doing this or if I can keep doing this. So a short little timeline, and mainly I put this together because I know that when I first started trying to make this transition, one of the things that was, and Sharon and I were talking about this before, the fear of the unknown, right? How long would it take? Did I have enough money set aside to be in between jobs? There was just so many questions. So I wanted to share a little bit about how long it took me, and because I had a little bit of a different type of experience, some positive, some negative aspects to it. So March 2022, a teacher that I followed on Twitter, she always had a lot of really great teaching ESOL resources, which I had begun doing in my last year of teaching. And all of a sudden she posts this Google Slides on Twitter, transitioning out of teaching, how to optimize your LinkedIn. And I was, wow, I really never expected that. And I thought, well, if she can do it, maybe I can too. And it just started kind of like getting the ideas flowing. I knew I wasn't happy. I had been unhappy for a while, but I don't think I ever really considered leaving, just because I didn't know what else would I do. So as of May 2022, what else can I do, right? I started narrowing it down. And this was a result of getting a lot of advice from other teachers who had transitioned, lots of LinkedIn posts, and just things that kind of slowly turned into, okay, what did I love about teaching? What were the skills that I'd learned as a teacher? How could I use those to transition into a different career? What skills did I like to do every day? Because that's important, right? Like there's a lot of skills that we developed as a teacher that we maybe don't necessarily want to do every day, right? So I started narrowing it down. I made a list, which ones I would want to do. And that with that information in hand, I was able to look at a lot of the careers that teachers are currently transitioning to narrow it down to instructional design. One of the things that I'll say about COVID, of course, there's not much in the way of positive that came out of it. But one of the things for me that was positive is that when we were kind of put into that emergency mode of emergency remote teaching, and I just started learning all these different technologies and things that I had never really, used before. I always found interesting, but didn't really feel the need to really push myself. When I did that, I started to realize I really enjoy creating these e-learning experiences for my students. And without the push to remote learning, I don't know if I ever would have discovered that I enjoyed it as much as I do, or that I had a bit of a knack for it. So summer 2022, upskilling and resume writing. Not all of our skills transfer. There are many skills as an instructional designer that I never used and I had never developed when I was a teacher. So finding out where those knowledge gaps was key. figuring out where I needed to fill in the gaps, where I needed to upskill, what technologies I needed to learn, what how to translate my resume into corporate ID language and not teacher language, right? That was a process over the summer. I was still getting my year-round pay at that point from my last year teaching, so I was able to take that time to do it. And I started, and then towards the end of the summer, I started creating my portfolio and applying for jobs. And one of the things that I thought was really valuable, somebody told me, was don't worry about getting your portfolio perfect or completed or done before you start applying, right? Because it's never going to be perfect, right? Especially not, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, right? So it would never be to the point where I would say, oh, this is done. And if I waited, I would just be waiting forever. So I started applying. I was networking a lot on LinkedIn. I was in part of different groups, and I got a lot of feedback from those groups. The teaching a path to learning and design group was essential for giving me feedback on my portfolio website, as well as the different projects that I was putting on there. And that support really kind of helped me through. All right, so mid-September 2022, job offer. And I put teacher to ID ? Because this was not the job that I currently have. I was offered a role. They knew my background. They knew it came from teaching, that I had never done that before, but that I had taught myself and went through, I couldn't afford an expensive, teacher boot camp course. I just couldn't do it. I'm a single mother. And so a lot of the stuff I had to learn from all the free resources that are out there, such as events like these. And they knew all my background. And about after 3 weeks into the role, and this was the day after I got a lot of positive feedback on the project that I had just started. She came in and said, Laura, you're a pleasure to work with, but this just isn't a good fit. I don't think it's the right fit. And I lost my job. And it was devastating. I had just poured so much time and effort and my heart and my soul into learning this job, the things that I needed for this field. And I was just starting to pay my bills, getting my bills caught up. And I just didn't have the money to really go through it all again. I was devastated. I felt like I was back to square one, right? That had been my ticket out of teaching. And now I would need to go back into teaching. And it just was a huge blow to my confidence. But a lot of the support that I received, I did post about it in that LinkedIn group, and everybody was very supportive. Not only like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you, but wow, they only gave you 3 weeks and they didn't give you any chance. They didn't work with you or give you a chance to learn when they knew exactly what your background was. And I got a lot of support that way, that this is not the normal experience. So even though it was hard, I decided, okay, well, I start applying for teaching job positions again and getting my resume switched back. I figured I would still apply while I could. I got a part-time serving job to help pay the bills, and I gave it one more shot. And I actually joined a EduFlow course. It's a free course for instructional design, and they have a Slack group. And I happened to just post my introduction, I'm so-and-so, I'm Laura, I'm from South Florida originally, but now I'm in the Tampa Bay area. And this is how I got my current job, because the girl that I ended up replacing, she was promoted to a different area in the company. She was looking for her replacement, and she saw my information, saw that I lived nearby, and reached out to me. I still had to go through the whole application process, interviews, and it's actually about an hour away from me. So at first I turned down. I said, I don't think I could drive that far every day when I'm a single mother, I have my son. And then they came back and said, well, what if it was a hybrid role? So now I go every Monday. I'm in the office. It's about an hour and a half drive with traffic there and back, but then I work remotely for the rest of it. And I think both of the job opportunities that I had were roles that were close and local. I think the ones that are completely remote are really, really competitive. So I do recommend maybe looking for something local or hybrid, or any sort of situation where you're not up against the rest of the country, right, for those roles. But that just happened to be my experience. So job offer 2, right? And I've been working for Goodwill, Minnesota since November, around a little before Thanksgiving. And then so currently, this might seem a little bit more dire, but I put on treading water. So I had this disastrous 90-day review, and I've always done well in any job that I have applied myself to. I usually do very well in reviews, but I am still learning, and my development speed and storyline is not quite what they need at my work. And so I had this kind of disastrous review where they were going to work with me, but they weren't sure if it was the right fit. And those were those words again, right? Maybe I just wasn't cut out for it. But I've never been one to give up. And although I was already giving 110%, I gave 120%, right? I tried to advance my skills in storyline even further. And I had a rather triumphant return with less than a week later. And I submitted my projects for review again. My manager was overjoyed. He said, these look great. I never expected, to turn it around like this. And so now I'm in a much better place, but there's still kind of, I feel like that, in the back of my mind, like I got to keep it up. I don't know if that's sustainable. When this happened, when I had my 90-day review, I almost contacted Sharon to say, I don't think I should speak. Like, I don't even know if I'll have my job then. And something kind of just said, you know what? You still have had this experience. It might be helpful to somebody. And of course, it turned out even better when I did make kind of that comeback, and my job's on much stronger footing now. So I'm glad that I agreed still to speak, and hopefully this is useful, because like I said, my experience hasn't been the typical, but there's been both positive and negatives. So I did put this wakelet together. It's curated different lists, resources. This is that Google Slides that first kind of spurred my idea for transitioning. And there's, I think, 14 different items in here. You can use the QR code to access it if you want to. There's a lot of things that are specific to instructional design, but there's also articles that I've collected that help you decide, is instructional design right for me, or what are the skills? So while there is more focus on instructional design, there's also a good balance, I think, of just resources for educators or anybody really who wants to transition out of the classroom. So, and I'd be happy to share the link if your QR code's not working. I can put that in the chat. And that's kind of where we're at. I would love to connect with everybody, and hopefully somebody, this got something good out of it. And again, sorry, I'm so nervous, but I think that's all. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
That's awesome. I mean, I will be the first to say, it's not always a triumphant thing moving from one thing to the next. We want that narrative where we just keep going up, 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 but the first job that I got super excited about and got invited for an interview, and I mean, like 3 or 4 interviews in, all the way to the end, and it's not the right fit.
Yeah.
But but the thing is it's really hard to believe it in that moment. But I think they were right. I don't know if I would have been happy in the corporate environment. And this was what, May 2019. Would I have, how long would I have stayed in the pandemic when publishing, because it was a publisher, when publishing started, tightening more, would I have been looking for another job anyway? So,
absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Kate, are you ready? Handing it off to you.
Hey everybody, so I do not have slides, so my face is just going to be really big for you. Hooray. So I'm Kate. I was an educator for almost 2 decades, 19 years. And in January, so I taught for a while, and then I was a school and district administrator for a while, and I founded a school as a principal, and then I went back to the classroom. I decided in January of 2020 that I would go back to teaching in August of 2020, so that was really good timing. And I loved it, and I loved everything about teaching, and I still do, and I still miss it, but at the end of the day, I was not a good partner, and I was not a as good of a teacher as I was when I was younger, and it was time. So last January, I went on medical leave, and was very fortunate that I had enough sick days to make it through so that I was not out of income. And I didn't know what I was going to do. My wife said, I don't totally remember this, but she said she was upstairs one day and I walked upstairs and I said to her, Jillian, I could do anything. I could do anything I want. And like, because I had been like, well, I have to get a job with Schoology, or I have to get a job with Illuminate, or I have to get a job with Newsella, because these are the things that I know. But it occurred to me that I actually literally could do anything I wanted. I could go learn how to be a lumberjack if I wanted. I did not want, but I could. And so I decided to meet with a career coach. And it was the best decision I've ever made. The program is called Inner Compass Coaching. I don't have the link with me, but I'll get it before the end. And it was the best thing I've ever spent my money on. It was $1,500. So it was much less than a lot of career coaching programs, but it hurt, because teacher salary, and then it's like going to be gone soon. But it was totally worth it. It goes through, it's almost like a therapy approach to career coaching. So rather than, doing all of the assessments and helping you with your resume and helping you with your interviews, they take you back and they try to figure out, what did you love? Sorry, my dog is making really weird noises right now. I apologize. If you hear that, that's my dog. They take you back to your childhood. What did you love as a child? And then what were your favorite jobs and favorite moments of jobs? And what do those two things have in common? And through a few weeks of career coaching, what I decided was that I really wanted to be in learning and development, specifically in instructional design and e-learning development. I really love writing lesson plans and I really love making slideshows. And so it just seemed like a good fit. And so I started applying for jobs. And the first job I applied for, I was absolutely not ready for it. But when the recruiter gave me the feedback that they loved me, but they didn't have time to train me right now, I was like, oh yeah, well, I'll show you. I can go learn Camtasia and Storyline and I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. And I did. They had already filled the role by that point. But they were super impressed by how quickly I had, upskilled in that way and had something professional to show them. And so I actually can count the hiring manager from that role as a mentor now. And she doesn't have a job open right now, but I've called her through a couple of painful experiences in the job search, and she's just a really great person to have. So I think my first lesson in the search was, it's not going to be fun all the time. And you never know where you're going to find a connection, and like, take no for an answer, but say, and how can I be better? Because folks want to help teachers. And you never know where you're going to find a mentor or find someone that you click with. Back up, I was a science teacher. I forgot to tell you that. And so I have also been applying for like jobs at STEM companies and tech startups. But when I got those first couple of rejections, I started putting out on LinkedIn about my journey. And I started being the LinkedIn stalker and the LinkedIn, like telling everybody about everything and reading everything. And I found my best friend from figure skating in middle school's brother was working at a university and they needed an instructional design contractor. And I messaged him and I was like, Adam, I don't have any experience, but I've learned these 3 things. What do you think? And I ended up getting a huge contract from that because he took a chance on me and they really needed someone. And so like, if you see your brother's college roommate's teacher's sister-in-law on LinkedIn and they post something that interests you, just message them. Like, the worst thing that can happen is they ignore you or they just say no. But if I hadn't messaged Adam, I would not have been able to make it through the summer without having to look outside of my new career path. So I, in order to take that job, and I also found a company called Arise Digital Solutions, which is like an organization that hires instructional designers to design trainings for call center employees for a variety of companies. So like I have made trainings for a top tax preparation software company that I'm not allowed to say the name of. I have made, I've done stuff for a web hosting company, and all those contracts come through Rise. All of that to say, I ended up starting my own business, which is called Red Kate Designs, which was my rugby nickname. So it's redk8.com. And that's where my portfolio is. And that's my website. And that is where I would say probably a quarter of my income is coming from right now. So I hustle and try to get contracts, but I also, people have started kind of finding me at this point. And I mean, don't get it twisted, like I'm not Devlin Peck, but like I'm starting to get contracts like pretty regularly. And starting my own business is like the scariest thing. And the number of hours that I spend on QuickBooks and just like organizing my life and calling my accountant and having a panic attack because I got this letter from the IRS. Like, it's a lot to run your own business, but it is so much fun, and it's so empowering to be in control of my life. Like that's the big difference from the olden days of teaching. Like, my wife says that sometimes Laura, I was not a very good figure skater. Let's be clear about that too. But my wife said that sometimes I come up and I'm like, I'm going to the bathroom. And it's 9 o'clock and I can, like, I used to go all day without going to the bathroom as a teacher. So like the freedom that I have from running my own show is really pretty awesome. But I can't fulfill my end of the family by just doing that. So I have a full-time job with a nonprofit out of Minneapolis called the Center for Victims of Torture. It's a pretty intense name, but sorry. I found them the same way Laura did on a Slack group from the EduFlow course. So the EduFlow, their introduction to instructional design principles, I think is what it's called. It's free. It's 3 weeks. I made 2 friends out of it. And it is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I did that as I was getting the contract with the University of North Texas. Absolutely do it if you haven't done it yet. I agree with Laura. Don't wait till your portfolio is perfect, but do update it as your skills get better. So like I looked at it a couple months ago and I was like, oh God, that's still on there. So as your skills get better, put new projects up. And then transparently, the job that I'm in right now is not a fit. My manager and it's not a fit. And so I am looking for new jobs right now, and I'm back on the emotional roller coaster, and I've been super excited about stuff and thinking the process was going really well. And then I say something in an interview and like, then the process ends. And so I have to figure out what to do. And so just know that like, you're not alone. And you're gonna find things. And I would love to know where everyone else is too, in their lives and their goals. But, it's all about networking, and it's all about putting yourself out there. So like, if you feel like you don't know something, go learn it, but don't be afraid to tell someone, I'm learning this, here's what I can do so far, and here's what I'm planning to do. Cause that's how the University of Texas thing, or North Texas, happened for me. I think that is most of what I have. Yeah, that's my story. I don't have an organized PowerPoint, so I'm not sure if I'm done, but I'd love to answer questions if you have them.
No, I think that's perfect. Yeah, we have plenty of time to do more personal questions in small breakout rooms. So I'm gonna open up breakout rooms and we'll go until, let's say, 7:50. I'll give you an extra 5 minutes to make sure that you get plenty of time. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Before we get to our whole group Q&A time, I want to let you know the next time that we will meet. The next time we are meeting is Tuesday, April 4th from 7 to 8 p.m. So it is just a couple weeks away at this point, just 3. Normally I have a month between sessions, but this past month I went on a trip until I got back March 11th. So just a couple days ago. And it was wonderful. Yes. and I went to Tunisia for a week, and then I went to France for 2 weeks. And by the end of it, I was like, I'm really a homebody. I really want to go home. So it was definitely a trip that I will never forget. It was awesome to see friends. And I will see you hopefully back here in just 3 weeks now. What I'm putting in the chat right now is a link to a presentation that I love to share with people who are just getting into instructional design. It's a presentation that I made with basically that I like to call my first aid kit. So if you're just getting started, you want to know what this field is, what kind of jobs are available, and how to get started, it's a great place to begin. What else do I need to do? I'm going to open it up for questions and answers, and I'm also going to put the feedback form into the chat and the registration link for the next session. So please feel free to unmute yourself as you see fit.
Hi, thanks, Sharon. I had a question, not, I guess, specifically about ID, but just general thoughts on AI and all of this. Sometimes I'm thinking, like, where is this field heading? Where are a lot of fields heading? And I was just curious if anyone has any thoughts. Like, I mean, the technology, it's like you can learn Articulate, you can learn, Adobe, whatever it is, but then like, is there going to be some sort of a machine that's going to start doing these things for us? I don't know. So I was just thinking ahead. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and they said we're currently in like the 4th industrial revolution. And I thought that was fascinating, because when I think about industrial revolution, I pretty much think about, whatever, the early 1900s and the factories and all this stuff. But then I was Googling, and there's like a first one, a second one, a third one, a fourth one.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, interesting. Maybe you all know this. I didn't. But so just curious if anyone kind of had some thoughts on that.
I definitely think of, I'm sorry, who else was
Nope.
in the chat?
Just me, but you go ahead.
Oh, Laura.
Laura, sorry.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple things, because I've been tasked with talking about ChatGPT to my department. So I have been thinking about it a lot, and I think that we are entering a time when it's obviously becoming more and more apparent that we are not going to need our students to write essays to prove that they know stuff. That has never really been a good assessment for whether somebody knows something. And now, if we can have ChatGPT do it, like, what are we really asking them to do? And I think that we really need to start preparing, I hate to say students, because learner, it just seems better, because that's what you do your whole life, is you learn. We have to ride alongside this technology. If we are the ones that have right now, I don't know what the future holds, but like, if what we can do that is unique is the general intelligence and the emotional intelligence, the social intelligence, then that's our wheelhouse. That's where we're still relevant. But we can use these tools to help us with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we don't have to go out and learn our Articulate, if we don't all have to go out and do that, that frees us to do something else. And so our role kind of shifts from tech person to designer, to thinking about how the technology is actually going to be used by users, and is it accomplishing the goals that we set out for it to do, that we're tasked to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Laura, do you want to pick up on that at all?
Oh, yeah, just a little bit from what I've read online from, like, Dr. Luke Hobson had a blog article recently that he also did on his podcast. There's like 10 or 15 ways instructional designers can use Chat GPT. There's been a lot of out there kind of it's never going to really replace the kind of the critical thinking that we do as humans, but it's a great way to brainstorm, to get a foundation for maybe rewriting your resume or writing a cover letter. And then you still always will have to go back in and go through it and tweak it and personalize, but it's a great like starting place for these things. And the concept, I guess, of like prompt engineering, or really kind of crafting the prompts that you give ChatGPT so that it gives you kind of the output that you want, is kind of an art in itself. And there's a lot of people on LinkedIn who have been posting lots of different things to, what are the best ways to generate prompts. I find it really interesting. I thought it's great for crafting like multiple choice questions, right? Where you want some extra distractors. I always had struggled like coming up with realistic distractors. And I was just playing around with it, the ChatGPT the other day, and it came up with a bunch of things that I was able to then use as kind of like the launching board for what I actually use. Like it's never going to replace, the human mind, but it's I just see it as a tool that can help make us more efficient and save time and energy. So, but there's lots of stuff out there on LinkedIn, and a lot of interesting information for how educators can use it. So I think it's scary, but it's fascinating at the same time. So that's all.
We have just a couple minutes left. Any final questions before we wrap up? I put some links in the chat that relate to what she was talking about from Luke Hobson. Yep, Raphael.
Hey, Sharon, just wanted to do a quick clarification on the LAMP program for those who are interested. So just to be clear, it is unpaid. Although that being said, you can still, especially if you do the paid program, you can put it under as like professional, relevant professional experience under a heading and that was something I looked up under like a LinkedIn guidance on, like in terms of like putting in work that you may not actually necessarily be paid for.
Sure.
So just a quick tip I wanted to add.
Sure. Great. The name of the program, Carrie, is LAMP. It's do you want to put a link in the chat, Raphael, for that? Do you have a quick moment to do that? It's associated with Steve Corney. He was on last summer. So I would go back to our playlist for last summer. Let me see if I can pull it up and put it in the chat for you. I'll put the link to the playlist, and I'm not exactly sure. It was definitely last summer, but there's a link to the playlist for all these sessions, so you can go back and find him. I think it might have been July 2022. All right, we are at the very end. It is 8 o'clock, and I need to say goodnight to my kids. And you guys, I'm sure, has lovely things to do. Kate and Laura, thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience. It means so much when I continue to be surprised at, maybe I shouldn't be surprised that people like to pay it forward. It's just a wonderful way to give back and help people who are trying to make the shift too. So I really appreciate you being here. I hope you guys come back in April, and I'll see you then. Thanks all. Have a great night.
Have a great night. Bye.